Hello gamers, what's up boys? Welcome to everybody's favorite type of content, a tier list maker. Over the years I've been asked this more than once to make this. This is probably my least favorite content to make, so you can expect this video to be made one singular time. And yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what you think of it, and if you disagree with me, let me know in the comments down below. But let's get in it. I've already made my list, you know, the best, very good, good, playable, barely playable. Not very good at all. Artillery, my nemesis, and Kihan's favorite tank, which obviously has to be on the bottom of the list. Now, first up, 1-to-1. 1-to-1 actually, since it got buffed a while ago, it's actually a very good tank, to be honest. I played it on an A, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's overall just solid and can be really a top performer. I think this will go into very good. Then we have the 113 and IMO. This is between very good and good for me personally. I really like the 113 as well because you have a lot of HP. You have still very good heat pen as well, and you can side script with it. I'm gonna put it in good for now, and when we're done, we're gonna do a review of everything. Then 121B, again a very solid tank. I mean, really good heat pen, armor, not as great as the 1-to-1. But it doesn't really play like the 1-to-1 at all, right? So the 1-to-1 and the 1-to-1B, even though they both have 1-to-1 in their nick, are very different. I would still say that this is going into very good for now. Maybe I'll switch it to good, but yeah, not sure. Then next up, the Wheezy Light. Now, I would say that the Wheezy Light is very bad IMO. It is a light that is more like a medium than a light tank. It's too big. You can barely fit it in any bushes. To me, it's one of the lowest performing light tanks out there. I don't think much more needs to be said about that. It's not very good. You're not really going to enjoy it. So why would you play it? Then VZTD. Now VZTD, since the buffs, if you play it aggressive, is amazing. Is actually an amazing tank. Overall, it's really, really good. It has amazing heat pen. I think it's 395. And then it has 1100 HE alpha as well. So I would say this is a very good tank. I don't know how else to say it. Then next up, the 5A. It's a tank I don't like playing. I don't really do well in it. I don't like it. I feel like with the 5A, you trade off on armor that you have in a 113 for just a little bit extra gun depression and DPM. And that's just not something that I am really a fan of. I much prefer to have that more armor that you can play aggressive with than have the 5A, which just really gets spent everywhere, in my opinion. Around the turret, the hull, gun mantlet. I'm gonna put this under playable. For me, this is worse than the 113. I know there's gonna be some questionable opinions from you guys in that, but it'd be that way. 116. I don't think that not much needs to be said about this tank. It is absolute garbage. It's probably one of the worst reward tanks I have ever seen in my life. The only worst reward tanks are the ones that Wargaming released for the Tier 8 mini campaigns back in the day, such as the Tier 8 Chieftain, the Ice 5. Those are worse, but those also gotten buffed since then. But this is going straight into that IMO. Then BZ75. I am really not a fan of the BZ75. The gun handling is the same as the 705A. But the 705A can at least side script. This gets spent everywhere. The only good thing it has is the rocket boosters and the big H people allowing it to get into position really quickly. So I would say that the BZ75 is playable, but I would not go beyond that. Then 114. 114 is another tank that I don't think is very good. It is that reward tank from Rhine season back in the day. But for me, this tank feels awful. It doesn't snipe really well. It doesn't brawl well. It doesn't have amazing pen. It doesn't really have anything that makes this tank good. I would personally rate this under the 5A and the BZ. I would say barely playable because I really, really hate my time in it. Well, 115 BO, not too hard. 5A, I mean, that's kind of logical. TVP, again, a really hard tank to judge too much. I would say that this is just a playable tank. It doesn't perform that good. It doesn't perform that bad. It's just really hard to make a tank with 4 shots like that work. And nowadays, a bit more heavy or TD meta. Like either you play against a bunch of heavies, which is not that great for you, or you play against a bunch of TDs, which is also not that great because they just take away too much of your HP. I would say this is just into the playable category. The playable category should be the biggest one anyways. Like that's where the bulk of tanks should be, because most tanks should be playable. Then the VZ55. The VZ55, he got nerfed recently, not too long ago. But I would still say this is a good tank. I probably wouldn't put it in very good anymore, but it still has the strengths of doing 1,000 in like 3 seconds. And I think that is something that cannot be underestimated. It did drop out of the meta, quote unquote, a little bit, because, well, every time something gets nerfed, people just move on from it, even if it's still playable. Like Eskung, for example, is definitely still playable, but people just kind of don't want to play tanks that are nerfed, in my opinion. And it just feels like they're refusing because they saw the nerf. They're like, I don't want to play this anymore. So I would put this into the good category. I wouldn't say this is very good, but I would say still a strong tank. Then EBR 105, of course, this is its own little tank, right? In terms of light tanks, EBR is just up there. It is, you know, it even got nerfed in the day. It is just the best. It has everything: speed, camo, gun. I think this easily goes into the best category. I don't think there's much discussion about it. That and Manticore, I think, belong with the best, just because of how good they are in their respective class. Then 50B. I would say 50B, for me personally, is a good tank. It has HP, it has speed, it even has a little bit of armor, I know. You can bait people to shoot your hull, and it does have some random bounces. I would say the 50B, for me, is a good tank. You know how to make this work when you get to be better in the game. I would like it. I like it more than these tanks for sure. So I would put this into the good category. Personally, right? Of course, I'm always working this list from like in my mind. Then we have to think though, the Batshot 25T, with it getting buffed, I would say it was barely playable before, but playable, but barely. I'm gonna put it, I think, in playable for now, because it's still gonna be really hard to make that tank work for most players, including myself, because of 5 shots, the long exposure time, not very high HP pool. But I don't think it belongs for me with the good. I think it's just gonna be in the playable category. Then, of course, the Batshot already, I mean, don't need to discuss about that. Belongs almost on the bottom. I think this is the Fush 155 and this is the Fush B. I'm not sure. I'd say this is the Fush B. The Fush B, since it got buffed, is actually a good tank. If you know how to play it, it's actually a good tank. It's more than playable. It can be very strong with that 6 shells, because you really only need a clip and a half to have a good game. Since it got buffed, I think this belongs in the good category. Together with field mods making it so you cannot track the Fush, I think this belongs in the good category. Then the Fush 155 IMO, this tank, don't need to discuss much. The gun is awful. It's just so not enjoyable to play. It's a 750 alpha simulator. I am going to put this into the very bad category. AMX 30B, I don't need to explain. Absolutely awful. AMX M4, since it got nerfed, I don't think belongs in the good category anymore, but I would still say that it is playable. It is not a bad thing now, but again, people, not completely bad. I think people moved on from it since they got nerfed. AMX 13105, I would say that this is a good light tank still, and I will explain why. I don't think it's the best light tank. I think it's somewhere in the middle of the pack. It is a combination of like a mini Batshot, but still having good camo, not too big, I think this belongs in the good category. This is still a good light. Gorilla, I'm going to put this also into barely playable. Gorilla, former shadow of itself. The gun just feels not nice. The shells go everywhere. You get spotted, you're dead. Very popular TD, but to me, barely playable, to be honest. Then is RHM Panzerwagen, though. And I would say that this is going to be into the playable category. It has a really good gun, and you can play it like half a medium. But camo-wise, it's still not bad. But size, purely spotting, it's not good. It doesn't do spotting very well, just because of how big it is. It's amazing for onslaught, but for random battles, I would say playable, just because you can use the gun to your advantage. But in terms of the lights, like purely scouting, a bit less. Panzer 7. Difficult choice. Difficult choice. I would say that the Panzer 7 belongs in... The Panzer 7 belongs in playable. I would still not say it's good, since it got buffed. I still think that its bigger brother, the VK, is much better because of the big alpha, even though that this has the gun that handles a bit better, has faster APCR as well, right? But I would say playable for the Panzer 7 is where it belongs in its current state. Then we have the mouse, and for me, the mouse is a good tank. Because with the mouse, if the battle is not 2.5 minutes, you can trade 1 for 1, and you will always win the trade simply because you have more HP than the other person. So I would put it into good for me, because I like playing the mouse. I have pretty good DPGs on the mouse, and overall I tend to perform in it quite decently. Then the E100 for me goes into playable. I still struggle with it for the E100. For it to make it work, you have to be really, really good at angling and knowing when to turn your turret. It's not really my type of tank exactly. I'm not that sweaty that I'm always trying to angle perfectly with it. And if you don't, you just simply get penned through the turret, through the sides, through the lower plate, because that's not a very strong either, like compared to the VK, for example. So playable, I think is where the 100 belongs. GW 100 into the artillery category. Jagdpanzer, a bit of a meme tank. If it performs amazing. Having that 420 heat pen, of course, goes through everything you meet. But I would say that the Jagdpanzer 100 in today's World of Tanks goes into playable. For me, I think it just goes into playable. You can play in it, you can perform in it, but it really depends on the matchup and the MM you're going through. Then the E50M, for me, is a good tank. It is a little bit of a hybrid between a Leo and like a 430U. Like, it doesn't snipe as well, it doesn't brawl as well as the 430U. But overall, I've come to enjoy this tank quite a bit. Simply because it does have some bouncing potential. You can play a little bit aggro with it. And I honestly think that this is just currently, for me, a good tank. Then, the Leo 1. The Leo 1 is formidable. It's such a good tank. Super strong. With HP, it can also even take some damage. Amazing gun. Really good pen still. Good camo. Everything is just amazing on the Leo. For me, this goes into one of the best. It is the best sniper for me that actually works. So the Leo belongs for me in the best of the best. Amazing tank. And then the VK72 VK7201K, the war tank. For me, that's an amazing tank. Amazing pen with 350 heat. You can bait with the frontal plate. You can use that HP to brawl. The armor is, of course, not amazing overall, but it's workable. This belongs for me into one of the best. I really love this tank. I think it's amazing. I love playing it. Of course, the shells are slow, but you adjust to this, IMO. Then the KPZ, the... What is it called? I don't remember what the assembly shop tank. I remembered. I never really got to like this tank. I don't know why. I think that 340 heat is the sweet spot. Or, yeah, 340 heat is like the sweet spot where it's really, really good. But with this tank, with its 320 and also the turret just feels a little bit random, taking pens everywhere. I would say it's a playable tank for me. I don't think it's very good. I didn't like it much when I marked it. Not something special. I would not put it amongst my good tanks whatsoever. Waffenträger E100 is, well, if it was in the game right now, it would be playable. That's about it. Situational, but playable. Progetto 65, I mean, I don't think we have to talk too much about it. The tank is currently terrible in its current form and shape. Until it gets buffed, not much. Rhino, to me, still barely playable. I really don't like the Rhino. Lack of DPM. Yeah, the turret has been made better, but the lack of DPM just makes it such an awkward tank to play. Together with not really good gun handling at all. Barely playable for me. Then the Caro. The Caro is a good tank. For me, I really like playing the Caro, actually. I think its lack of DPM is compensated by the fact that it has a turret where you can play a little bit aggressive with and can play on the front line and get good damage out. So I'm going to put this under good because to me it is a good tank. Unbelievably enough. In the long past, I would disagree with that. I think the Mino is just a playable tank right now. It used to be just dumb, but it's an unpennable upper structure. Now the cupolas can be penned, but you still need a lot of pen to go through it. Overall, playable tank. STB, to me, it just goes straight into the playable category because I am not an STB fan. I think the STB DPM is fake, as in you're never able to utilize it. I think the STB turret is also fake because playing hold down where you are playing against heavies and etc., you just get constantly penned through the turret because it has these random weak spots. I really don't like that. So I will say no to the STB. No, thank you. Type 5 heavy. I would actually put this into barely playable in its current state. You can still trade it out, but it's not that easy to make it happen. A very MM dependent, very pen dependent on the enemy team. Barely playable, I think, is the category that it belongs into. Then the Hori. The Hori, for me, goes straight into the best. Probably the #1 tank destroyer at this moment in time. Amazing pen. A superstructure where you can play a little bit aggro with and bait people into trying to shoot it when they can't pen it, just enough to bounce some shots. Goes through everything, good reload as well, good mobility, good reverse speed to get around the corner. I think the Hori belongs in the best. Then, Type 71, recent introduction to World of Tanks. I'm going to put this actually straight into barely playable, in my opinion. I think they missed the mark with this tank. Where the tier 9 has the auto bounce on the upper hull, the tier 10 doesn't. So every time you see the hull, you pen the hull. The cupola's really big and the mechanic doesn't compensate for the gun. Like the improved accuracy mechanic. So to me, this is a very meh tank. Barely playable because of that. Because it's so situational. At least all these other tanks have something else going for them where they are able to get played. And then 60 TP, it's hard to say. I would almost put it into the best, but could also be into very good. To me, the 60p is amazing in current World of Tanks. You have everything. You have armor, you have alpha, you have speed even, because it's really not that slow. Hold on potential. And that Trollus armor really works out. Heat pen also just fine. I'm actually going to put this into the best. For me, it's one of the best tanks in the game right now. The CS63, fastest medium in the game with its turbo mode. But the downside of this tank IMO is the gun. The gun is very trollish. It likes to not work, not to perform, likes to send the bullets everywhere. But still it's a very strong tank. I think this goes into the very good category. STRV, don't need to say much about it. Very situational tank. In the situations where it works, it's amazing. Outside of that, it's an STRV. This goes straight into playable category. Then, however, the Kranwagen. The Kranwagen got nerfed. And everybody now really hates the Kran. In my opinion, the Kran still has potential by playing hold on. The gun was already bad before, it's just worse now. I think this goes into playable. I think the Kran in its current form is still playable and still better than these tanks. So I think it goes into playable. And then Udes, 15, 16, the best hold on medium. Unlike the STB, not a lie. Plays hold on very well. Very strong, performs in that as well. Siege mode a little bit awkward. A bit less awkward than the STB. Has a fire problem, can get solved a little bit by experimental HP though. I think this goes into the very good category. A very good tank that does, for me, performs. Manticore. Together with the EBR, the best lights in the game. Simply go straight into the best. There's no better passive spotter at tier 10 than the Manticore. Even the gun is pretty good. Only downside, ammo capacity, of course, but together with EBR belongs there. 215B, I love this tank. It could do with a little bit of an armor improvement, but I think this is very good. The gun is just so good that you can compensate for the lack of armor. The only issue is fire, but again, with experimental HP, this becomes a lot less to deal with. So I think this belongs in very good. Then GC into very good. Nemesis and Nemesis number 2. The FVs, I hate both of them. I hate their existence. I hate everybody that plays it. I hate this tank. It always hits me. It always bends me. I'm always on the receiving end. I hate this tank. I know no more words needed about this. Disgusting. On to the Centurion Action X. Now, the Centurion Action X ammo is an amazing tank. It has speed. It has heat pen. It even has good HE pen. It has a turret that does work, not entirely, but then again, it would be very imba if the turret was unpennable. It allows itself to relocate across the map in such a simple and quick fashion. It's an amazing tank, performs really, really well when you know how to play it. This goes into the best category. Very, very nice tank. Super Conqueror. It probably belonged in the best before he got nerfed, but now it just belongs into very good. This tank is still amazing. Sure, it got nerfed, but it still keeps its strengths. Good gun, fine reloads, good speed, armor that works. I think this belongs in very good. Now, the Badger is a tank I hate playing, but I still think it's a good tank. For what it does, is very strong at it. It can also play aggressive, but my reason for disliking the Badger is because I love the Tortoise so much. The Tortoise has no lower plate like the Badger and is able to peek corners where the Badger isn't. The Badger needs to be hold down. I think, however, this is still a good tank. Then the Chieftain, with it getting nerfed, is probably just a good tank. It still has amazing hold on potential. So if you're able to utilize that, Chief players just don't want to play it anymore because, like I said, when something gets nerfed, they just move on from it. I think this goes into good. Still has good speed, hold on potential. The ammo pen is not a really issue for the Chief because you can peek hold on. So I think this is still a good tank. Concept 5 is worse in every single way than the Leo. And I think it belongs straight in this category because of that. Then the Sheridan. To me, this goes into this category as well. It's just awful. I think it's an awful tank, an awful light. The only way to make it playable is by using the small gun and playing it like half a medium, but it's too big, too boxy. It doesn't work. M48 Patton, I think that the buffs don't do much for it. I think it was playable before. I think it will be playable after. I don't think it will switch categories whatsoever. I almost put it in barely playable, but I would say that it's better than these tanks, but not by much. Then T92, whoops, out. T57, a tank I love playing. It's so good if you know how to play. It has trollish armor as well. It takes up a lot of bounces, amazing DPM. It's a close range menace where if you are able to use the DPM, it's amazing. Goes straight into the very good category. Then the E5, the best tank in the game right now, IMO. The best heavy, at least. Speed, gun handling, armor, pen, it has it all. It's just so good. E5 is beautiful. I think it belongs there. The E4, I would put this into barely playable for me. Unlike its E3 comrade, it has too many downsides. With its armor layout, where the cupola, the sides of the turret, even the mantlet, all of it is not that great. It's very annoying to play. The gun is not that good either, even though it has high pen. It's just very annoying to play any position with this tank. For me, this is barely playable. I really don't like it. The E3 used to be into the very good category, but nowadays E3, I think belongs in good. It still has its hold on potential, even though it got nerfed, still has its high pen, very annoying to deal with. A good tank. Then the M60 is, for me, a very good tank. With its speed, gun handling, and pen, it compensates for having such a large turret. It can move around the map swiftly and contribute where needed. I'm going to put this into the good category for me. The E6 is just a playable tank, albeit barely. The only reason why it's still unplayable is because it has DPM to compensate for its lackluster everything else. Yeah, I think it belongs there. The turret is just... The cupola is way too big. Way too big. Why? It's hard to say, man. I would put it in barely playable, even though it could argue to be in this category as well. It's just not very good in its current shape. It doesn't have enough advantage for its rather large turret that sticks out everywhere. Meh. 260, I think this goes straight into the best. Speed, mobility, armor, gun, pen. It has everything. The only downside, frontal fires. T22 in its current shape and form, straight into this. It's terrible. It's just a former shadow of itself. Very good for the T100 because it's just below Manticore and EBR. It doesn't spot as well, it doesn't fight as well, but it's still a very good light tank. K91, I'm going to put this into the playable category even after the buffs. I think because of the way that the tank is designed with the backwards turret, it will be able to excel in certain situations, but it will be absolutely terrible in others just because of the backwards turrets. It's very awkward to peek. You have to peek either in sidescape or with the turret back first. Not something I like, not something that is my jam. Then the 705A, it goes straight into playable. It's only good at one thing, which is side scraping. Outside of that, a backwards turret, very awkward to play. A gun that is random as hell. Not great pen. Issues with modules. For me, barely but for me, playable, but barely playable. Then 430U in its current shape and form goes into the playable category. I just prefer the 113. I think the 113 is just a better tank. Does the same as the 430, minus the camo and size. But 430U, with its ammo rack problems, with its fire problems, even though you can fix some of them, is not that fun to play. 268V4. It used to be good to very good, but since it got nerfed, I would just put it into playable. It still has a little bit of trollish armor, even though it's not as strong as it used to be because of the HP nerf, for example. Playable because it also still has good pen, but not much beyond that. Then 277, I think this belongs into, for me, the very good category. It's not as good as the 260 IMO, but it's still overall a very solid tank. Good turret, good armor layout, since no pike nose, right? Good pen, gun is fine. Not that much gun depression, but it is what it is. Then though, the 279E. I didn't like this tank before it got nerfed because of the playstyle of it. I am honestly just going to put this into the playable category for me because it's not fun to play. You drive, you go above, you just sit there. If it's a TD with high pen, he goes straight through you. If it's anybody else, you just wait for them to shoot and shoot them back. The gameplay of it is boring. Overall, gun handling is also not good, but it's still playable nonetheless. But to me, it's not good. It never really was. ST2, I think the tank belongs in the good category now, even though the gun handling is still random. It has really high HP pool. It has very trollish turret for a lot of things. The double can, of course, help you out in certain scenarios to get 800 instead of 400. I think currently it's a good tank. Not as good as the IS-32, but still, nonetheless. The 261 goes into artillery. 260A is horrendous. The 268 goes into this category. I really despise that tank. It's supposed to be the same as the VZTD, but this is only good at sitting in the back, and it doesn't even have a good gun for that. So, either way. IS-4, never been really a fan of it, but I think it's a good tank right now. It has trollish armor layout. Downsides though, ammo loadout, gun handling, not the greatest on that thing. 907 goes into the playable category for me. It's just not a fun tank to play in randoms. It never was. Lack of gun depression, alpha, 320 alpha in my opinion is horrendous as well. Does have some trollish armor, but overall not that fun, not that good. 2685 straight into this category, an awful tank, horrendous to play. 140, Kihan's favorite tank. No. The 780, this goes for me into the very good category. I really love this tank. I don't know why. I really, really love it. The armor layout allows you to bait with the front. The gun handling of it is also pretty sweet. Nice high alpha. Pretty easy to get a good game with. Overall, really enjoyable. Outside, of course, module damage. But this is, again, fixable with the addition of experimental HP. Then 452K just goes into playable for me. This tank is nothing special, unlike the 780. It doesn't have that frontal armor you can bait with. Makes it a lot worse. Higher alpha, though. But still, again, big module issues. Nah, not my thing. And then IS7... I'm going to be upsetting some of my Yuxin fans with this. I think for me, this just goes into the playable category. I don't think this tank is anything special outside of just YOLOing with Grousers and Speed Governor. It's just, the gun is too bad, the pen is too bad, the handling of it is too bad. It's not a tank that belongs into the in the good or very good category for me. I think that's it. I think we're done. I think I did pretty good. I'm not sure where your opinions are. This is the one time I made a tier list. I'll never do it again. What do you think of it? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this 30 minutes of just straight up talking. And I will see you guys all for the very next one. Peace, boys. Ciao.